Get ready, because what you are about to see is the most devastating defeat ever handed to a rogue HOA president. Picture this. After months of relentless harassment, endless fines, and the audacity of threatening to physically dismantle my property, I didn't just win. I didn't just get my custom-built $50,000 electric gate approved. I brought the entire tyrannical regime of the Westview HOA crashing down. She called the police, convinced she had me dead to rights for violating community standards, but when the officer approached, I didn't say a word. I simply handed him the original deed to my property, watched his face go pale, and saw the very moment her power shattered. She went from president to publicly shamed pariah in minutes. You need to see how this all went down. Welcome back to Homeowner Havoc, the only channel dedicated to exposing the petty tyrants of neighborhood associations. If you have ever fought a Karen, battled a board, or just wanted to scream at a neighborhood busybody, you know the rage this story brings. This epic tale of injustice and ultimate payback is guaranteed to get your blood boiling, so before we dive into the madness, do me a massive favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you think the HOA has too much power. Now, let's get into the setup. Our protagonist, let's call him Mark, had finally saved up enough to build his dream home in the exclusive, gated community of Westview Heights. He paid his massive dues, he meticulously followed the construction guidelines, and he was ready for one final, elegant touch, a custom, wrought-iron, electric driveway gate, something beautiful and substantial to secure his family. The plans were submitted to the Architectural Review Committee, which, in Westview, meant they went straight to the HOA president, Patricia Jenkins, a woman who saw her title not as a volunteer position, but as the supreme authority over every blade of grass in every mailbox. Patricia was the quintessential neighborhood despot. She had been president for 12 years and viewed any attempted improvement or change as a personal affront to her established, rigid vision of the community. Mark's initial plans were for a beautiful classic black gate. They were rejected. The reason? It's too black? Mark sighed, repainted the drawings to a slightly softer charcoal gray, and resubmitted. Rejected again. The scroll work is too aggressive. Mark, wanting to avoid a fight, simplified the design, submitting a sleek, modern, minimalist gate. Rejection 3. It clashes with the Tuscan aesthetic of the community. Now Mark was getting suspicious. He knew the truth was that Patricia simply didn't like him, or perhaps anyone who dared to showboat a little with a new, expensive feature that she herself did not possess. Mark decided to push back politely. He sent a registered letter requesting a formal, itemized list of specific violations and a copy of the bylaw section dictating acceptable gate aesthetics. Her response, delivered via an email stamped with the HOA seal, was chillingly simple. No gate, Mr. Thomas. Consider the matter closed. But Mark had already placed the order with the fabricator, and the $20,000 deposit was non-refundable. He knew he had to build this gate. Mark decided to proceed, confident that since Patricia had failed to provide any specific, actionable reason for denial based on the documented bylaws, he was within his rights. The gate was installed in 3 days. It was stunning, a magnificent automated piece of engineering that perfectly complemented the house. Mark was finally proud. Patricia, however, was incandescent with rage. She arrived at Mark's house the morning after the installation, screeching from her sedan before she even shut the door. She didn't ring the doorbell. She began rattling the gate itself, screaming that this was an unsanctioned fortress and a personal declaration of war. Mark, who was watching from his security camera feed, simply kept the gate locked. He tried to speak to her via the intercom, offering to meet later to discuss a compromise, but she only grew louder. The very next day, a certified letter arrived, an immediate, non-negotiable fine of $1,000 a day for the unauthorized erection of a non-conforming, structurally aggressive barrier retroactive to the installation date. Mark sought legal counsel. His attorney quickly discovered the fatal flaw in Patricia's tyrannical system. She had, for years, been acting unilaterally, approving and rejecting architectural requests without ever formally convening the required 3-member Architectural Review Committee ARC. The ARC was essentially just Patricia with a rubber stamp. When Mark's lawyer sent a strongly worded cease and desist letter detailing this procedural violation and demanding the immediate nullification of all fines, Patricia's response was not compliance, but pure, unhinged retaliation. 2 days later, Mark's power was shut off. She had used HOA funds to pay a subcontractor to temporarily cut the electrical line feeding Mark's property at the main community box. Claiming a mandatory utility inspection, Mark was left with no air conditioning, no lights, and a dead electric gate, trapping his car inside his own property. His family was suffering, his legal bills were mounting, and the HOA's petty dictator had him trapped, helpless, in his own home. He was losing the war. Mark wasn't just a homeowner. He was an expert in property law researcher trait that had served him well in his career as a commercial real estate analyst. Trapped inside with his dead phone and a furious spouse, Mark didn't panic. He went straight to the safe and pulled out the original bundle of closing documents, specifically the deed of trust and the community's master declaration. He spent the night reading the fine print, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions CC and RS that Patricia swore by. And there it was, buried deep in Section 4B, clause so specific and so arcane that no one had ever paid it any attention. Any property purchased prior to the Community S incorporation date of March 15, 2005, shall be subject only to the original 1998 CC and RS relating to easements and use restrictions, but shall be exempt from all subsequent aesthetic and architectural amendments unless explicitly ratified in writing by the current owner. Mark's eyes flew to his closing date. February 20, 2005. He had bought his lot before the Community S official incorporation and subsequent massive rewrite of the architectural rules. His property was grandfathered in. The minimalist gate rules, the Tuscan aesthetic rule, the whole arch structure, none of it applied to him. He had the grounds for a complete legal victory, and he had the original, stamped documents to prove it. Mark called his lawyer at 6 a.m. The lawyer was ecstatic and immediately drafted an emergency injunction to restore power and a lawsuit to force an immediate special board meeting. But Patricia beat them to the punch. She arrived that afternoon with 2 uniformed county police officers, 2 board members she had browbeaten into attending, and the subcontractor ready to start cutting the gate itself. She stood on the curb pointing at the gate, telling the officer, "This man has violated our codes and is illegally barricading his property. You must issue a citation and compel him to remove it." Mark finally walked out, not with a protest, but with a stack of papers. He calmly approached the lead officer, bypassed Patricia's hysterical shouts, and said, "Sir, before you issue anything, please examine this." He handed the officer the original 2005 Deed of Trust and the 1998 CC and our document is highlighted to Section 4B. The officer read the text, looked at the date, looked back at Patricia, who was now turning purple, and said, "Ma'am, based on this original deed, this homeowner appears to be exempt from the rules you are citing. He is within his rights to install this gate." Patricia's power shattered in that very moment. The sight of the police officer turning on Patricia was priceless. She tried to argue, sputtering about technicalities and legal loopholes, but the officer was done. He informed her that if she, or any representative of the HOA, touched Mark's gate or his power box again, they would face charges of criminal vandalism and utility tampering. Patricia retreated, not defeated, but humiliated in front of her neighbors and the 2 spineless board members. But Mark was not done. The lawsuit, demanding a special board meeting to address Patricia's malfeasance, was now fully underway. Mark's lawyer presented the evidence: years of unilateral decisions, the illegal utility shutoff, and the frivolous, unsupported fines. The evidence was damning. The community, already fed up with Patricia's iron rule, held the special election. Mark didn't even need to campaign. His lawyer's presentation of the facts did the job. The vote was a landslide. A formal motion of no confidence passed 98-2. And Patricia Jenkins was immediately removed from the HOA presidency, effective immediately. The fallout was swift and brutal. The HOA's liability insurance carrier, upon reviewing the utility tampering incident, informed the board that they would not cover any lawsuit stemming from Patricia's actions and demanded she'd personally pay the $15,000 fine Mark's lawyer had sought for punitive damages related to the power outage. Additionally, the new temporary board, terrified of further lawsuits, was forced to issue a community-wide email. All fines levied against Mr. Thomas related to the driveway gate are null and void. The Westview HOA formally apologizes for the actions of the former president. Patricia wasn't just stripped of her power. She was personally financially liable and publicly shamed in front of the entire community. A glorious day, but the final hammer blow was yet to fall. With Patricia publicly disgraced and financially damaged, Mark was finally able to enjoy his custom gate. But the best revenge is living well. And Mark's final act was a move of pure, calculated genius. A few months later, Mark saw a for sale sign pop up in the community. It was Patricia's house. Turns out she couldn't afford the legal fees and the damages. Her reputation was so toxic in the neighborhood she loved to rule that she had no choice but to sell up and leave. When a potential buyer approached Mark's beautiful, secure property and inquired about the magnificent gate, Mark was ready. He'd put up a discreet sign himself. "Ask me about my HOA exemptions." When the buyer approached, Mark didn't badmouth Patricia. He simply handed them a neatly packaged folder containing his now famous legal documents, including the section that stated his property was exempt from all architectural amendments. "I want you to know," Mark said to the potential buyer of Patricia's house, "that if you buy this home, you will be subject to every single rule Patricia ever created. You can't have a gate like mine. You can't paint your house a non-approved color. You can't even have a basketball hoop without permission." The buyer, seeing the thick rulebook and realizing Patricia's house was the opposite of Mark's freedom, walked away. The house sat on the market for 6 long, agonizing months. Patricia eventually had to cut the asking price by $75,000 just to offload the home she'd spent years using as her throne. Mark watched her moving van pull away, a lonely, defeated figure. And as her moving truck cleared the curb, Mark leaned on his spectacular custom-built $50,000 electric gate, gave a slow, satisfied nod, and clicked the remote, watching the wrought iron slide shut one last time on the bitter, defeated former tyrant. The gate wasn't just metal. It was a permanent, beautiful monument to his victory. Boom, that is how you handle an HOA tyrant. What was the most shocking part for you? Was it the illegal power shut off? Or the look on Patricia's face when the cop turned on her? Let me know in the comments below. If you loved this deep dive into homeowner payback, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you don't miss the next saga of neighborhood warfare, and ring that notification bell. Won't believe the drama we have coming next week. See you then.